Thank you all for joining us for the Strategies for Surviving the Thesis and Dissertation Process from Recent Graduates Workshop. Joining us today are Dr. John Hirano, who graduated with his PhD in Electrical Engineering in 2015, Dr. George William Kajjumba, who graduated with his PhD in Civil and Environmental Engineering in spring of 2022, and Jordyn Sanders, who graduated with her MA in Criminal Justice in fall of 2022. So they're going to be answering your questions about how to survive your own process that you're working on right now, and just giving you tips and some advice as you are going on through your journey. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to them for introductions first, and then we're going to go ahead and take questions from our audience. So John, will you please get us started?
Yeah, of course. I'm glad that I still get to fall in the category of recent graduates, but it's been a little bit. My name is Dr. John Hirano. Like Devin had mentioned, I did my research in electrical engineering some years ago. I graduated from the University of Hawaii at Manoa, is where I did my studies. But now I get the opportunity to work with U.S. Bank, doing what we call goals coaching. And really it's a change in what I did. So I went down the track of engineering, found myself in something a little bit different, and finding new passions in life. So life changes. I think our objectives change, but the journey that you all go through, I think, defines who we are as people, and they're all part of who we are. And so now I get the opportunity to work with the university, helping students kind of figure things out, get a better idea of what's in front of them, what's their goals, what their aspirations are, and kind of put a plan to it. But that's kind of a little bit about myself, and I'll hopefully share a little bit more throughout our time today.
Thank you. Dr. Kajjumba?
Sorry, I had muted myself. I've been talking to myself.
No problem. We also don't see your camera on, in case you wanted to turn that on.
Hello, everyone.
There you are.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was in the office and I was trying to do something. So my name is George William, as Navina said. My name is George William Kajjumba. I graduated from UNLV in 2022. That was in the spring. And I have some good experience from graduating very fast from UNLV. I was able to finish my doctorate within 3.5 years. So I'm ready to share some tricks.
Thank you. Jordyn?
Hi, everyone. I'm super excited to be presenting to you. I went to many of these workshop writing boot camps, and honestly, it helped me so much and learning how to manage these publications, even if it's your thesis, dissertation, or a like article publication. So like Navena said, my name is Jordyn Sanders. I am now a first year, I got finished with my first semester of the PhD program in the criminology and criminal justice program, but I just finished my my master's in actually technically I finished summer of 2022. So it was a long process for me. I did have to get extensions and stuff, so I'm super excited to tell you all about that. But I got my associates from CSN in 2018, got my bachelor's from UNLV in 2019, and then my master's also from UNLV, like I said, through that. So I'm super excited to share some tips and tricks for you guys, because this is my passion, is working and helping students. So yeah. Nice to meet everyone.
Thank you all so much. We're so excited to have you all here. Just want to remind our audience, don't be shy, write your questions in the chat. You can unmute yourself to ask our panelists. They have some really great experience and different perspectives to share with you all. So while you all think of your questions, I'll go ahead and just get us started by asking our panel, what did you most struggle with while writing your thesis or dissertation? And if you wrote both, maybe you could talk about how the struggles were similar or different. Whoever would like to get us started.
I think I will go first on that. If I'm to look back the days that I spent at Sierra University, writing is kind of like those of us who are from like the science background, you find that designing the best approach to get your experiments or to get your results from the field is kind of so hard, whereby even your advisor or the person whom you're working with, sometimes you find that they don't have any clue. And you as a student, you have to, to spend nights and days. And then sometimes you go, you work it out, and then it turns out not to be working. And then you have to figure out where should I tackle again to make sure it works out. So basically coming up with the best approach of collecting data from the field if you're from social science, and all if you're from science background, getting your results, getting your experiment in line. It was one of the challenging bit when it came to writing my dissertation. John, in addition, subtraction?
Jordan, you can go first.
Yeah, I was gonna build out. I'm from the social sciences, so it's a little bit different, but really working out like what the specific research questions are that you're looking at early on, and presenting those questions to your advisor. Also like getting the best advisor for you, knowing which professors and faculty members you click with the most. Also, like definitely for me, it was time management and procrastination, setting those strict boundaries with family members and friends, and then like understanding the grad college deadlines and working with them to establish those deadlines, and working with your advisor too to understand those deadlines. So, yeah. How about you, John?
No, yeah, I think for me, kind of along the same. I probably tackled more things than I probably should have through my journey. I had a little bit longer. I took about, I think maybe like 6 or 7 years to get through everything. I did kind of we had a weird program. It was like a bachelor's direct to PhD program. So you kind of just skip everything in the middle. So you spend all your time in research, which have pros and cons, especially from an engineering background. You kind of get in this place where you're just designing and doing stuff all the time, and trying to figure out when's the best time to publish. Is it worth publishing, or is it just an incremental increase in what you've been working on? But I think the real challenge, I think, is just kind of just sitting down. For me, once I was sitting, it was good. I'm definitely one of those people that like, I'll free write for 4 or 5 hours. I'm good, and I'll kind of get through my work. But it was harder for me to find that time and make that time in my schedule to be like, this is my workplace. This is where I like to study. For me, it was coffee shops. So for me, it was just making sure that I could find a place that was quiet enough, but not super quiet. I'm not a library kind of person for writing. So I would just find that place, right? Is just kind of find through that, and then really just forcing myself to be like, okay, today's a writing day. We're going to sit down. We're going to tackle, whatever it is, the lit review or it's the background research. I kind of write in circles, and so I don't really write linearly. I don't know if you guys wrote linearly your guys' papers. It was like, what do I feel like writing today? Okay, I'm going to get something done. I'm going to get some words on the paper, or maybe today's just an edit day. But really, it's just trying to find the time and the habits of just sitting down and really going through that work and just putting text to paper or on your computer and kind of getting things done.
Thank you all. So thinking kind of back on your entire process, what did you learn? Is there anything you kind of really took away that going into it you didn't expect?
Ooh, I'll hit this one. Honestly, this process of getting the thesis done and starting my dissertation is all about like learning about yourself and how to balance those things in your life, like what John was saying, learning to balance work life and school. It's so important. Like I didn't realize how good it was to balance your physical health too, and maintaining a clean environment. Like it's so important to have everything organized beforehand, and doing it like before you're in the middle of like proposing or defending, like really getting time and sticking to those little blocks of chunks that you can do to prepare yourself to write those big ginormous essays or documents. Also, I learned like to utilize a lot of strategies I've read about in self-help books. Those are really awesome. Listening to motivational pieces when I wasn't working on my thesis, or like trying to have sticky notes all around me to help motivate myself. But like sticking to what works best for you was definitely a huge learning process for me. But it's awesome. I wouldn't have it any other way.
I think for me, it's kind of along the same, right? It's learning about yourself. I think it's probably the biggest thing throughout that journey was kind of learning, okay, what is my style? What fits? I think I was lucky enough to learn some of those things in my undergrad, so that like I knew that I'm a night owl. So you would probably find me doing lab work. I was terrible. Don't follow my example. I always say this every time I share. Like, I was the kind of person that went to the lab at 8 p.m. and then worked till like 6 a.m. I have problems, but it's also because engineering labs get a little crazy, and we had a very social group, so you end up talking way too much. And so if I went in late when no one else was there, it was quiet. I could get my research done. I worked in optics, and so like I needed my lab like pitch black 90% of the time. So just to reduce noise and things like that. But finding that what works best for you, I think, is learning your ebbs and flows, and then finding the right tools, but knowing that tools aren't everything. I think now more than ever, there's like 10,000 productivity tools that you can have to kind of get your writing done and get organized. Back in my day, I'm gonna say like an old man, like I had paper, I had stacks and stacks of paper, and that's what research looked like. But you know, like find that tool. You know, I wrote in LaTeX. Technical writing made things life a little bit easier. Find the tools that help, but don't make life harder than they need to be, because at the end of the day, your journey is far beyond the research that you're doing now, right? This is just the beginning of things, so don't make this everything. It's a little bit of what I learned.
I think on my side, the things that I learned during that time when I was a student was specifically, I came in when I had some kind of like a rigged mind. I would say the word rigged in a way that I knew what I wanted to do and I wanted to stick to that. So from day one, I found out that it couldn't work out like as time was progressing. And then I realized that you in a graduate school, you need like to easily adjust to the new environment. You shouldn't be rigged and say, okay, this is what I'm going to be doing. That's it. If it doesn't work out, I'll have to force it to work out. Always try to have an escape route. Without an escape plan, you can end up like, spending 7, 8 years in a graduate school. So having a backup plan is always a very good idea. That's what I can say.
So looking back on your, oh, did you want to add something, Jordyn? I guess I unmute.
Yeah, I was gonna say, sorry, I was gonna say, like, definitely what Kajjumba said was spot on, like learning to be flexible with different strategies too and trying them out. Like if one thing doesn't work one week, try a different thing, switch your environments up. If you think that you study best at home, also consider like limiting distractions. I think that was really big for me too, is like turning off my cell phone, social media, deleting social media for months at a time is like super helpful, not only for like writing, but my mental health as well. So
Thank you. We have a question going back, actually directed at Kajjumba. You said you graduated with your PhD within 3.5 years. How did you stay on track? What are some strategies you can share with our audience here?
It is kind of tough, I would say. But then I think one thing that helped me to graduate in time, I would say the team that I was working with was kind of a flexible team. And I was kind of connected so much with my advisor in a way that we could easily sit and find a way out. So what I can tell each and every graduate student who is here is always to find a good working relationship with your advisor. Because if your advisor doesn't have time for you, the advisor is not giving you the right direction. Of course, sometimes they don't know what you are doing too, but if someone is there and sit with you and, try to brainstorm together, you find that things kind of move faster. And then you feel like every time you find a roadblock, you have somewhere like to lean. So for me, I would say I contribute most of like my success to my supervisor, even though I was also more of like hardworking, but my advisor was kind of a person who helped me to go through all those kind of things.
Great, thank you.
Can I add to that, Nev?
Of course.
No, I think, and maybe you can add to this. Like, I think engineering, like speaking from an engineering side, it's different, I think, than other majors. Engineering, because I think that 3.5, 4-year window, I have several others within my group that I've had kind of that same time frame, maybe a little bit longer. I think the research is a little bit different. The requirements are the same, but when you're inventing or you're kind of in that space and you're not doing like this research-based like type of like, let me create these scenarios and walk through all these things, is a little bit different, I think, sometimes with that. And I think you're right. I think the advisor does have to play a big part. You know, my advisor was a little bit different. He would take his summers away. It was a little bit more complex. His wife lived in Texas. He lived in Hawaii. I understood him leaving for 4 months to go and be with his family. But, you know, those things matter. I think picking your advisor and understanding what, not just what research they're doing and is it focused in alignment with what you want to do, but like, do you jive? Do you guys have the same goals? Do you guys have the same time commitment to kind of make sure that you are progressing the way that you want to? If you want to be in and out in 4 years, then you need someone that's going to have the time to be like, hey, what's now? What papers are we doing? What are we moving forward? Because publications, I hate to say it, but it's a big piece of what gets that doctoral work moving faster and getting you close to that point and get being done.
Thank you. So I want to talk a little bit more specifically just about the writing process. So looking back on the writing process and knowing what you know now, is there anything you would have done differently?
Start sooner. Like not wait till you have everything done, right? I think for me it was like I had the research written, I had like all the background stuff, but I was like, I need to focus on the experiment. I need to focus on designing my test. I need to focus on iteratively designing new pieces for my sensors that I was working on. And then you're like, and it's good, just sometimes you're waiting around, and I did a lot of 3D printing in my day for what we were working on, and probably could have done some other things and got a little bit started early on some of that writing or the methodology, and not just having the methods written out in my notebook, but in a more formal format that was able to translate a bit quicker. So start early is probably the biggest tip I got.
For me, it was learning to not hyper focus on one section or one stage of the process. Like if you're outlining and you are like, oh, I really like this section in my literature review on this independent variable, like go with it, stick with your flow, but also remember to like take breaks. Like if don't burn yourself out trying to write one section. Like for me, my literature review when I first did my proposal was like dang near 50 pages, and my advisor was like, look, that was way too much explaining, and like he kind of like walked me through how to really get to the point. And one piece of advice he told me that was awesome was that a done thesis is a good thesis, or a done dissertation is a good dissertation. Even if you have some edits to make, like just acknowledge each step of the process that you've completed and, you know, reward yourself for that. Like don't be like, okay, now I got to focus on another section, or I got to do this chart. Like if you go through a ginormous hurdle like turning in a draft, like just step back for a little bit, wait until you hear feedback, and then, you know, keep on persevering. And like setting a schedule too, like a study schedule, especially if you work multiple jobs, and sticking to it. For me, I used like a Google Calendar and my Apple Calendar, so it would send me like notifications about when I had study sessions. Even if I couldn't do it at that time, I would work around it and know my schedule and replace it. Like if I couldn't study an hour at that time, I would move it to later on in the day. And being flexible with yourself, but not punishing yourself for doing things like that too. And organizing your environment, make sure that you have all the tools that you have. Like if you know that you love sticky notes, then have sticky notes there. Don't like not have it, or keeping like a little notebook for other ideas you might have in other sections, because trying to go through a hefty document and making edits throughout, maybe like you're like, wait, what was that section again? So kind of jotting it in a physical notebook really helped me out too. I don't know, what about y'all?
If I'm to look back and then I see what could be like the best way to write your dissertation, those people who are like from the science background, even from the social background, you find that your dissertation is always structured in like 3 or 4 different major chapters. So starting to writing those chapters in form of like papers, I think it will be the easiest way to tackle. For example, you say, this is my background, and then as if you're writing a review paper, that one can help you to actually understand and know the gaps that are within the research area that you are conducting. And then if you write it, for example, like in in a research paper, you can easily copy that and then paste into your dissertation. So it's not like double writing. And if you're writing in terms of like a research article, you find that things can easily flow because, like, for example, research article, it has a well-known standard. You have the introduction, you have methodology, you have your results, and then discussion. So if you're able to write those ones for each section, and then after that you compile it to have your dissertation, that will be the easiest way, rather than sitting and starting to write from page 1 to page 200 at once.
Thank you all. Just want to take a few seconds and make sure no one in our audience wanted to ask any questions. Feel free to unmute yourself. If there's anything you want to ask of our panelists.
My question is for John, not to just pick on one of you, and all of you can answer, but I'm picking on John because you went alt-ac, and I can't imagine any kind of fresher hell than staying in academia. So my question is, as somebody that went alt-ac, is there anything throughout the dissertation process, had you known that that would be your route, that you would do differently or that would have prepared you better to leave academia?
Thank you. No, I think for me, no, I don't think I would have done anything different. Mainly because, one, I believe everything happens for a reason, right? I think the skills that you learn throughout that process is important. I always had a great mentor tell me that, like, once you have that PhD, right, especially, or those graduate degrees, it's a key. It's a key that nobody can take away from you. It's a key that opens certain doors and opens certain conversations, and allows you to do certain things. One of the big reasons what I ended up doing and changed a little bit out of, more traditional academia was that I found a passion for people. And as an engineer, you get very easily sit yourself up in a lab all day and not talk to people. And I find a lot of joy in talking and working with people. So actually, out of grad school, I actually ended up working for a high school developing engineering programs, and then ended up back in academia for a while as a professor at more of a teaching university, at a teaching college, because I really enjoyed that part of academia and what it opened up. Life came your way, life changes, and you kind of roll with the punches, and I kind of end up in where I am now. But in terms of my time through that, would I change anything? Probably not. But I probably would have taken more opportunities to kind of enjoy the ride. But this is probably more of a self-reflection than it is of that, because I've always been the type of person that's like, what's next, and not enjoying the process, and knowing that there are victories in that process. That makes sense.
It does. Thank you.
Any other questions? It's a great question, Sarah. All right. So, do you all have any strategies in mind that you think all graduate students should implement to help make the writing process smoother?
I think, as we said in the previous section, we said that start as early as you can. That's one of the major things that you should focus on. Even if you think that you haven't got the right idea, writing and then modifying based on that is always the best way, rather than waiting and say, oh, let me first go and try this and see if it works out. If it doesn't work out, then I'll change, start writing as soon as you can. And then number two, as I've just said previously, try to write your dissertation in the form of like manuscripts. So you have like some kind of like different sections, like 3 or 4 major huge sections that you can break down and then start writing those. Number 3, working hand in hand with your advisor will be another strategy, because these are the people who is going to help you maybe look for the funding, try to see if resources are available to conduct that kind of research, because sometimes you can find that there is no money to conduct that kind of research, and that means you are basically on the dead end, even though it is something that is promising, but there is no money to conduct it. So having your advisor in your pocket is something also you should think of.
I would love to piggyback off of that and just add that, like, don't be disappointed if you don't get the results that you're expecting, or if you, even if you don't get results, like, think about why you didn't get results. But I've seen, and I've actually heard some faculty members when they're looking for job candidates that, like, if they do a quantitative method first and then they switch to a qualitative method and like do interviews, they're almost like trying to get the results that they expect. So if you don't get what the results that you're expecting, like, don't be disappointed or don't try out different methods. Instead, try to understand why you might have gotten the results that you did and find literature to support that, and have that open communication with your advisor. But not only your advisor, in my opinion, but also your committee members, even if they're people that you're considering to be on your committee, having that open line of communication, like about your ideas or what results you're finding. You'd be surprised how they can like connect you with other people, either professionals in the field or other faculty members that are more experienced in that, and kind of talk through that process. Also, your cohort, if they are in the same program as you and trying to get through this dissertation or thesis process, like, talk to them about it, learn what other grad students have in your program have gone through. And also understand the IRB process at UNLV. Start early with that. I had really good advice from one of my faculty members in the department that you should talk to them. You can schedule appointments with them. They have a lot of like workshops that you can attend. Even if you are using secondary data, it's still important to understand that, because when you try to publish, you're going to have to go through them anyway. So if you do it throughout your thesis stage or your dissertation, like, understand what it takes to get through that, and like that kind of communication as well. So big time with time management. Start early. Work during your breaks too. I know it's tough that you want to take a break too, but just work on it, even if you have to take like a couple days in between. Learning to monotask, just singularly working on one task, not watching one of your favorite shows on your iPad or television. Like, I know it's so hard, but learning to monotask, just writing, maybe have music in the background if you have to, just learning about yourself and what helps you work best. But monotasking was huge for me. And then reaching out to your cohort, your faculty members when you feel stuck or disappointed in something that you might have found or could not find. Maybe they'll help you, direct you to a think tank that you hadn't thought of before, or a government document, or you never know. There's so much stuff out there. So just talk to people in your department. And if you feel super, super stuck and your department's not helping you, like, going to the grad college and talking to other people outside of your department is also super helpful. That's why we have that outside committee member, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, Jordyn, I love what you said about trust the data, right? If you designed your experiments and your tests and your surveys or whatever you're doing, let's say right, for a better term, right? If you went through the work, you've thought it out well, and it's not getting you what you want, it's probably telling you something, right? I think sometimes we fall in love with the idea that we had, or that ideal solution that we thought was going to work out. But being okay with failure, I think, is a lesson and is a piece in there to kind of like, okay, you kind of got to hold on to that, because it comes. It's I think good testing and good research comes with failure, because you have to be able to recognize and acknowledge that you don't know everything yet, and you probably won't. And I think the more you do research, the more you're like, I know nothing. I know some things, but I don't know everything. And I think that's the beauty of what you get to do, especially through the dissertations and thesis work, is really finding out, like, I know some things, I don't know everything, and there's a lot still to learn, and I think that's the beauty of it. And I think that's one piece, and I think a tip would be, I think, like you're saying, publish. Right? I think I said that earlier. When you're putting things together, and it's good in two ways. One, you get comfortable with putting your work out there. Letting it get critiqued, letting, whether it's a conference, a journal, or just a general article, having other people look at your work and be like, okay, this is good work. This is worth publishing. Hey, you need to work on this. You need to get some of these things fixed up. Really gets that outside perspective, even outside of your own research group, right? I think we all can get into that think tank, and where we're like, okay, this is good. And then you try to publish for a journal, and then someone's like, yeah, did you not see this article written by Dr. So-and-so that did the same thing, or did the same thing and showed it didn't work? And so when you can get more eyes on your research, I think it's always beneficial. Or you get lucky and then they come out like, oh, this is a novel idea. Why did nobody think about this? And then you're like, great, how do I get this done as fast as possible? If no one else has done it, how do I publish, pass it, and get done now? Because I think, especially from the doctoral side, it's like, right, it's new piece of knowledge to your field. If no one has done it, if it's novel, cool, that's it. That's all I need to do, get done, get on, and then move on to that next chapter of your life, beyond being a student, and where you can kind of dictate what you really want to do and look into new research opportunities and really put that that graduate degree to work.
I think I want to thank you for that submission. I want to thank Jordyn. There's one point that I want to emphasize to most other people here, especially those who are just beginning their graduate studies. Sharing your research with your committee members or the people that you think are going to be your committee member is very crucial. When I came into UNLV, I had this kind of mindset. I had to do something that I wanted. When I started sharing my work with my committee members, some of them were like, there is one specifically who told me that one is not going to work out. Then she connected me to the people in the industry. And then from the industry, I ended up having, like, they had so many challenges. Still, it was kind of in the same field, but it was a different problem. And then from there, I started now building up my research. So sharing with your committee members or people you think are going to be your committee members is very crucial. And if they don't know, they're going to connect you to the people in the industry.
Great, thank you. So we have a question in the chat. Have you taken advantage of any campus resources to help you with your thesis or dissertation? If yes, what are those and how did it help you?
I think one of the major sources that I used at campus was the writing, especially the English editing. We have that section. I don't know if it's still called English editing. You find some of us, we are international students. English is not the first language. So basically, you may think you're writing great, but then sometimes when a professional looks at it, will be like, no, your language construction is so bad. And this is something that is going to determine your publication. Because if you put out an idea and someone cannot read that idea and interpret or understand the idea because of the language, you're going to be rejected. So I think I used a lot of like the English editing resources at school, which helped me a lot.
I also use the writing center. I work at the writing center at CSN. I have since like 2016, so I kind of use them more than UNLV's just because it's like my work colleagues and they kind of help me bounce ideas. But having someone outside of your field also looking at your thesis or dissertation helps. So that's why the writing center at UNLV is awesome too. Even if they're only 30 minutes increment sessions, or I don't know, an hour-long session, you can kind of bounce ideas off of them or kind of talk about what stage you're stuck at, if you are stuck at, and they can kind of help guide you through, idea development. I kind of use the thesis and dissertation through the grad college. I wish I had used them more when I was formatting because there was a lot of things I could have worked on if I had just scheduled an appointment with them, even if it was a virtual appointment. That could have been more easily done than if I had done it through email. I know they're available Tuesdays and Thursdays, 12 to 2 throughout the semester, which is awesome. Like I wish I had used them more, but definitely use them if you're at your formulating your different sections and trying to figure out the guidelines and that kind of thing. So yeah. What about you, John?
I'm a terrible student. I did not use many of our resources at my university. I think for one, I didn't know about them. I think that was part of the problem. Like no one ever talked about like, hey, go to the writing lab. Everyone was like, go figure it out. And so that's kind of where the world I lived in at that time. And then so it was a little bit more of a struggle. So you're kind of there floating and you're relying on your advisor to be like, hey, where am I at? And understanding how language works, I think is a big part. Being someone that was born and raised in Hawaii on a little island where, to be honest, nobody speaks proper English. So that was great in my head growing up. And so having to kind of be and learn how to write for, even in some ways, the East Coast audience, which is very different than a West Coast audience, depending on who's reading your paper, who are you having coming in to kind of judge some of those things, especially for those peer-reviewed journals. It's kind of being mindful of that to make sure that you're writing in a way that is fitting of your field, not just the way that you feel is best written. But if the opportunities came, I think writing research is great. I've been lucky to be on a bunch of these in the past. So I know that there's some writing groups I think I've heard of. And I think if that opportunity was there, it would be great, because I think for me, sometimes just having that synergy of sitting with a bunch of people that are working on the same task, even though you might not be talking, but at least you all know you're kind of working together towards a similar goal, is helpful. And then it kind of helps keep you accountable. That's probably the biggest thing, is having that accountability at the end of the day to kind of go through those things. And so you're here, so you're already kind of in a better direction than I was when I was a student. So congratulations to you. And I'm sure there's been tons of you guys been learning about through the boot camp about what research is out there. And I'll just say, take advantage of all of them, because they're there. Most of them, I'm assuming, are free. Correct me if I'm wrong. And so take advantage, because that's all part of what, in some ways, you are paying for. So use those resources to really help you get the most out of what your ultimate goal is.
Thank you all. Yeah, those are all really great resources. Later this week, we're actually going to hear from our lead thesis and dissertation format reviewer. So she'll talk to you all more about all the services we provide. And like Jordyn said, you can actually make appointments to meet with our thesis and dissertation format reviewer every Tuesday and Thursday, and it can be virtual. It's exclusively virtual. That way it can kind of help you as you're going along the way, instead of when you're done kind of trying to format. Sometimes it can get a little bit tricky. So thank you all so much for sharing those ideas. So what suggestions do you all have for dealing with feedback, especially when it can be a little bit overwhelming at times, depending on kind of what stage you're in?
So, okay.
No, I'll go first. Why not? Ladies first. Not that we go to gender stereotypes or anything, but I did not end up dealing with feedback very well at first, like especially when my advisor was like, you need more time, like you're not going to meet the grad college deadline. Like I cried in his office and it was very awkward. So kind of being nice to yourself, like maintaining that balance is huge, but just work on it step by step. Like if you're at the feedback stage, be open to whatever feedback comes your way. Usually it's really helpful. I know for my department, like the criminal justice department, they have the proposal stage before your defense so that you get that feedback. And even if you change your whole all of your variables or certain variables, like be open to that feedback, and kind of if you need more clarification, don't be scared to ask your committee or your advisor why they wanted the feedback that way. Like don't let them step all over your thesis or dissertation. Sometimes they may use different syntax that may seem like their way of doing it, but maybe they're like, if you explain it, like, and don't be scared to not argue with them, but question them. Like, why does it have to be this way? Why can't I say it like this? Or why can't this variable, I don't know, like why is this demographic variable important if it wasn't in the previous studies? Like that kind of thing. Ask questions, and if just don't take feedback personally. Like it's not your entire life's work, I promise. Like you're going to do so much in academia, so this does not define you as a person. And realize that, like keep telling yourself that, like, yeah, you know, I could have done this differently, and kind of understand it that way. Yeah, what about you guys?
Yeah, so I can literally say sometimes feedback can be frustrating, especially when you enter into the section of publishing. You can't think you have done a lot, you have written the best manuscript. Then you get all this batch of comments, and then you're like, someone is like trashing all your work. So the best way to go through that, appreciate, number one, if they have not rejected you, because giving you feedback and rejecting you, that's like, that's hurting. But if they've just given you feedback and they're like, yeah, I think this and this and this is not being addressed, then you have the time and opportunity to answer someone and say, you know what, yes, maybe here I need to improve, or I can also, because if someone gives you feedback, it doesn't mean that that's what they're saying is right. Still, it is your work. Maybe sometimes you have to go ahead and defend your work. Maybe your committee tells you this and this and this may not be correct, or this and this has to be included. Sit down as a person and say, can I really do that? If I cannot do that, then have a backup. Tell them maybe, yes, this has been suggested, it's very good, but however, it cannot be done because of A, B, C, and D. Not to frustrate them more, you just say, I think I'm going to do this and this and this. That's what I can say.
Yeah, feedback. Feedback sucks, guys. it does, right? That initial, especially at the beginning, it sucks. It hurts. It's just what it is. Because yes, it's not your life work, but up to today, it feels like your life work. And so it does get better. It does. But I think the best thing to do is always look to the lens that, especially when it comes to your committee, they're pushing you because they believe that you can do more, or they believe that the work that you're there is worth focusing on. It's false, right? It's a very different when they're nitpicking on things, or they're finding those holes within your argument, and they're pushing your buttons a little bit. It's a different if they almost completely derail you completely. That's a whole different feeling. But that's usually that should be on your advisor to make sure that you're not getting set up for that type of failure, right? Getting set up to be challenged is one thing, but setting up for failure is a different thing, and that's probably more of a poor reflection of your advisor. Unfortunately, I want to say that nicely, than it would be of the committee or those giving you feedback. I think when you're getting feedback, like from third parties and outside sources, at least it doesn't feel as personal sometimes, because it's someone you haven't met, someone you might not know personally, or you've interacted with a lot. You just you take what they say. I always say take it with a grain of salt. Find the meat, spit out the bones, right? It's kind of going through it and kind of figuring out, okay, what are they trying to tell me? What am I trying to find about it? I think sometimes people have their own opinions on the solution methodology. I know for myself, when I was doing kind of my comp phase on that early on, we're trying to prove, is it going to be working, right? Is this all going to kind of go along plans? I had a committee member that was like, hey, he is looking for one very particular answer to his question about oscillating IR frequencies in order to get a sample set. I gave him some other answers that was different than what he said, but he was looking for one very particular answer. And so we went back and forth for 10 minutes trying to find out what answer they wanted. And it's a learning thing, right? It's like, okay, let me start thinking outside. And I think when it comes to research and it comes to doing what we are all striving to do, it's being open enough to be an expert in a field, but open enough to learn and be always willing to learn more, and that there's things outside, there's perspectives. And the truth be told, most of the people on our committees have spent way more years than we have up to this point. So they've seen more things, they know more tricks, they know a little bit things out, and so take them mostly as learning moments. But it does, and I will say, at the beginning, it always stings a little bit, because it hits our pride, it hits our egos a little bit, because I think we all think we know a little bit more because we spent the time we put into it. And so you take a moment, you breathe, you accept it, you reflect on it, but ultimately the goal, if the goal is for you to publish, to graduate, to do bigger things, then put your focus on those things, right? Shift your perspective a little bit, and kind of keep looking forward.
Thank you all. So we talked a little bit about, campus resources that you used. Aside from campus resources, was there anything else you used, like citation management software, for example, maybe Grammarly for when you're writing, or time management tools, anything specific that you really thought was helpful while you were kind of managing the different parts of your dissertation?
I'll go first. I've never gone first yet today. I'll take this one. For me, it was, God, I'm going to get this wrong. GRWB, I think was called. It's a pretty old software. It's just some general referencing management software, and then TextMaker, which was my LaTeX editor. It just made life easy because you write everything in a almost like a code language, which is not for everybody. Mind you, electrical engineering major, my life is coding at some points. But but it lets you do things like I can put citations and it automatically formats everything, right? For me, I didn't want to worry about the headache of formatting my paper. So there was a script that auto styler, so it makes sure everything is on the right chapters, all the spacing is proper. I just have to worry about writing. So that was the reason I took the time to invest in learning that software. And the two pairing softwares that kind of took care of the bibliographies and the citations, made sure that everything was in the right formatting, and I just had to worry about writing. I didn't have to worry about formatting. And then there are tons of new software out there. I like particularly Notion when it comes to gathering information and storing and organizing. That's kind of something I use even now when I do less official research. Let's just call it that. But I think once a researcher, you're always looking for new things and always trying to learn. So those are some of the tools I use.
Hi, I do have a question, and that's about formatting. The cover page for the proposal, I mean, the first three chapters, chapter 1, 2, and 3 of your proposal. If I write there running head and then, let's say, Turman's proposal, stuff like that. Because on the thesis, you should not put running head, right? On the cover page.
So Cecilia, so on Thursday, we're going to have a specific workshop on the actual formatting because we're going to have Dr. Stevens come in and she does all the reviews of those. So I don't want to give you the wrong answer in that for the rules that are specific to what you have to submit. So we can ask that question on Thursday.
Yay, thank you so much.
Of course.
So I think personally, some of the softwares that I used, right now, I think UNLV subscribes to Mendeley. It is a reference software. And if you don't have any subscription, please try to do that. They give you almost 100 GB as a student free. You can store your papers there. And you can access those papers anytime whenever you don't have access to UNLV account. So Mendeley is very good. And then number 2 was Grammarly. They have a free version. Still, it is very okay. You can have that one, even though you're an expert. You can easily miss that the A, where, so it can help you to modify that. Then another software that I use that can help you in data analysis, those from the social sciences, I think most of you use SPSS. So be well conversant with it. And I think also we have subscription as UNLV. Then those from the science, I think Origin Pro was my major analysis software that I was using. But if you are able to go to the software website of UNLV, there are a couple of softwares that you can easily use as a student. You don't need to buy any of these ones.
I used a lot of the library tools, especially when I was feeling stuck. I would find my specialist in my field, which was Susie Scarl, and she was wonderful, kind of helping me organize the literature review. And then I also used a Microsoft Excel just to kind of document before I used Mendeley. Mendeley is wonderful, and you can have a lot of add-ons on your computer, including like Microsoft Office, that will kind of cite it for you as long as you double check that the citation is in the proper format. But definitely Mendeley, Microsoft Office, especially Excel to kind of figure out those documents, and then Google Drive, of course. Google Drive is wonderful.
Yeah, I will emphasize that having Google Drive will help you save your information. In any case your computer crashes, you are safe. Of course, traditionally they used to tell us you need to have a hard disk where you can always be saving on databases. Trust me, you get tired of saving on databases, but if your work is backed up, actually even still UNLV subscribes to OneDrive. So always have that your OneDrive, like your file backed up on OneDrive. Even if your computer crashes, you can even go to London and you still open your OneDrive and work from there.
Yeah, cloud storage is important.
I keep hearing that more and more from grad students. They're moving more towards Google Drive and Google Docs and Google Sheets and all that because of that very reason. I've heard many people have lost information because something has happened and we're working on Microsoft Word. So don't let that happen to you. Make sure you get these things backed up. So we have about 5 minutes left. And so before we wrap up, I just want to open it up to our panelists and see if they have any last words of wisdom or advice for all of us here as we're continuing to work on either our thesis or dissertation or any other publication that we're working on before we wrap up our time together today.
I'll go first. I just wanted to say, like, be kind to yourself, practice multiple strategies, learn about yourself, and, you know, don't take feedback personally. Know that it's just part of the academia process, and it's something that it's better to learn about it now while you're in grad college than when you're a professional and you like, it's even worse. So definitely like take this as a learning process, learn about yourself and be kind to yourself. Don't burn yourself out and learn strategies to overcome burnout because wow, it can be a lot.
I think for me, I would just tell you before you start anything, just make sure you have the necessary resources to do that. If you think it's going to take this amount of money, it's going to take this amount of time, if you allocate that, make sure you work within that ballpark. So that one will help you to prevent, burning out rather than starting something and then in the middle where you find that you don't have the resources to finish it up.
No, I think you guys both put it great in terms of managing time, energy. I'm gonna go with enjoy the process. It will be the one that I'll leave you guys with on top of everything else. That you are, for many of you, this is a chapter, and remember that. Then that's all it is. It's just a chapter in your bigger story. It's a chapter in what's ahead of you, and just allow that to be the facts, right? You're gonna have highs, you're gonna have lows. Find people to celebrate life with, because those moments come, and sometimes they're far in between. So your cohorts are great, having those people around you, those that, whether in this group with you or those within your research group, celebrate together. Cry together when times are hard, because times will get hard for the most part. But then have those people around you, mentors, coaches, other people to just kind of help keep you on track. Your advisor will be one of those mentors that are like, they know what it takes to get there. Trust that they know what it takes to get there. And then just allow them to get you there and stay focused. Yeah.
Well, thank you all so much for sharing your time, your experience, advice with us today. And thanks to our participants for joining us for this panel. We'll see our participants back at Remo, and I hope everyone else has a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for having us. It's been wonderful. Have a great boot camp. Get a lot of stuff done. Don't procrastinate. Bye.